So insulin and glucagon, they are antagonistic to each other. Okay? Now, when you hear someone say insulin lowers blood glucose and glucagon raises blood glucose, yes, they do, but that's not their main purpose. Okay? Their main purpose is, insulin's main purpose is to stimulate cells to uptake glucose so it can be stored or it can be burned as an energy fuel to make ATP. That's the purpose of insulin. Okay? Glucagon's purpose is to mobilize glucose, and in other words, signal the liver to break down glycogen and take that glycogen, turn it into glucose, and increase blood glucose so that the brain will get its glucose that it needs. Okay? That's its purpose. Now, yes, it can raise blood glucose, and yes, insulin does lower blood glucose. And the two enzymes work together to keep blood glucose at a homeostatic concentration, whatever that concentration is. I don't know. Okay? If you want to know, you'll have to look it up. My eyes feel really dry. So, blood glucose concentration, in this way, is important. Okay? Because if your blood glucose drops too low, your brain isn't going to be happy. It can go into a coma if blood glucose drops too drastically. And if the brain, well, we'll get there, okay? Because we'll talk about how hypoinsulinism, how a decrease in blood glucose can lead to a coma, and how an increase in blood glucose can lead to a coma. Okay? Well, we need to visit diabetes first. Before we do that, let's talk about the physiology of insulin. So insulin and glucagon come from the pancreas, and therefore the pancreas is both an exocrine and an endocrine gland. Okay? So this is a high magnification of the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. And I don't like using this image because you really can't tell what's going on in the organ. Okay, so let's pull up the slides that I made. Okay. So this is a slide of the pancreas, and we're not showing any islets of Langerhans here that are of any significance. So this right here is what this is pointing to. In the center of this image is an area where you have ducts, arteries, and veins. And you have ducts in the pancreas because the pancreas is an exocrine gland and an endocrine gland. So the pancreas is like one of the secondary organs involved in digestion. So you're going to make digestive enzymes and dump them via a duct into the duodenum for digestive purposes. And that's what the duct's for. Okay, so now most of this stuff out here is exocrine pancreas. And here's a little islets of Langerhans. Okay? And then we look elsewhere. Here's another duct. So we'll ignore that. Here's an islets of Langerhans. Here's another one. Here's an edge of one. Okay, remember these are thin sections, so sometimes you just get the edge of one. Here's one somewhat in the middle. So they really look like islands. Here it is, higher power. And here is a pancreas. It's lobulated, and these white spaces in here is really artifact because they're really stuck together and separated by some dense irregular connective tissue. So here's an islet of Langerhans. Here's another one up here, and there's a small one right there. And then we look at a different slide or somewhere else on the same slide, and we'll see an islet. That's not one. This is not one. So here, that's not one either. So out of all this, we only see one. So in cat pancreases, we see Pacinian corpuscles, and I don't know what they're there for. Cats have Pacinian corpuscles in the pancreas, as humans don't. Okay? So maybe the posterior corpuscle is there because the pancreas is right next to the stomach, so when the cat eats, maybe the posterior corpuscle stimulates the release of insulin by pressure, because that's what posterior corpuscles are, pressure receptors. Okay, so we can care less about cats. So if you see a posterior corpuscle in the lab on one of the slides, you know it's a cat. And I don't see any islets of Langerhans here. Okay, so here's a couple more. Here's some adipose. But most of it is exocrine pancreas, and that's why they call them islets. They're little islands surrounded by a sea of exocrine pancreas. And then the guy that first described him, of course, was named Langerhans, so we named him after himself. And that's about it on that.